Symbols are funny. Every symbol has more than one meaning. Sometimes the meaning is obvious, but often a symbol gets picked up by a certain group and they give it a special hidden meaning. But it only has meaning to them, not to everyone else. Take the letter G in the center of the Masonic square and compasses. What does it stand for? It depends on who you are. Some say it simply means God, or maybe short for Grand Architect of the Universe, the G-A-O-2-U. Some say Gnosis, Greek for knowledge. And I'm not saying that any of these interpretations is wrong. Another group has a special meaning for the G, and it's not in Masonry. It's Jesuit. Hi, I'm David Daniels for Chick Publications. Jesuit is spelled with a J, right? But the home base of the Jesuits is the Church of the Gesu, G-E-S-U, with a G. Gesu, by the way, is Jesus in Italian. Let me read to you from Rulers of Evil by author F. Tupper Saucy. Hold Freemasonry up to the light, and you cannot help but see the black papacy's watermark. Isn't it reasonable, given the circumstances, that the G in the center of the familiar Masonic emblem represents the initial of Gesu, the residence of the Black Popes, at the Jesuits' world headquarters in Rome? Freemasons wouldn't suspect this, nor would Jesuits. It would be information reserved uniquely to the unknown superior, who shares what he knows with no one. Quote, "Your enemies will serve you without their wishes," said Sun Tzu, "or even their knowledge." End quote. There is so much more than that he says, but I'll stop there. But is his contention even possible? A 1997 article from the Esoteric Gnosis magazine tells how an influential Italian Freemason, Arturo Regini, 1878 to 1946, wrote in 1906, criticizing the Masonic leaders Giuseppe Mazzini and Albert Pike for failing to create, quote, a secret rite above all others, a sort of masonry within masonry, which would have unified the divided Masonic family, end quote. 2 years later, in 1908, a group even broke away from the main group, forming, quote, a new Masonic organization with its headquarters at Piazza del Gesu in Rome, end quote. Eventually, it became the second branch of Italian Masonry known as Piazza del Gesu. That's because of the location of their headquarters. In 1921, Regini joined the Supreme Council of 33 of the AASR, Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite, in Piazza del Gesu at number 47. What's so interesting about that? It just happens to be across the street in the same plaza as the Chiesa del Gesu, the Church of the Gesu, which also happens to be the world headquarters of the Jesuit order. Now, Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite, or AASR, when written in Italian, would be the reverse. Rito Scozzese Antico et Accettato, or RSAA. Well, guess what I found across the street from the Chiesa del Gesu, the Church of the Gesu? See the RSAA and see the double-headed eagle? That is a symbol for the 33rd degree that the RSAA uses as its symbol. And see above it? If you look carefully, it's faint, but you can see the 47. In fact, the RSAA online says it's still at 47 Chiesa del Gesu. How close are these two groups? I think the Jesuits were keeping close tabs on everything they did. what could have motivated Regini, with all places in Italy, to place it in front of the Jesuits? If nothing else, the Jesuits certainly could keep an eye on a group like the Masonic Supreme Council of 33. Of course, Jesuits don't just keep tabs on what's happening across the street. They keep tabs on what's happening across the world. In 1851, a former Dominican monk came out of the Catholic system with an amazing testimony. Giacinto Achilli was a visitor for the Dominicans. We would call him an investigator. He found problems between people and did what he could to fix them or smooth them out. He was at heart a peacemaker. That's probably why people had occasion to talk with him and even pour out their lives to him. So though he was a Dominican, he was more of a counselor and not an inquisitor like other Dominicans. In fact, he hated the Inquisition, though it was run by his own order. Giacinto had been educated in the college at Viterbo, Italy, about 40 miles northwest of Rome. His Greek and Roman literature teacher was special to him, and one day in Tivoli, only 16 miles east of Rome, they met again in September of 1833. Only this time, his teacher had become a Jesuit. Now, this Jesuit in our story had a tender spot in his heart for Giacinto. He took note of when Giacinto took his walks and started to walk with him. As they talked on their walks, the Jesuit began to take Giacinto into his confidence. Oh, there's so much he told him. But here are a few secrets he admitted about the Jesuits and the Church of the Gesu. First, the Jesuits spoke of the Dominicans and their attempt to get information from victims in the Inquisition. Quote, "The principal object of the Inquisition is to possess themselves, by every means in their power, of the secrets of every class of society. Now the Dominicans, even with the assistance of the priests, would be altogether unequal to this task, were not the Jesuits themselves the secret officials of this police." He stated that it was futile to do as the Italian police and try to deceive people into revealing their secrets. The Jesuits are much more subtle. But nothing of this sort takes place with the Jesuits, to whom no door is closed, no curtain drawn, no veil or shadow cast over secret or mystery. What they cannot learn from the men, they ascertain from the women. What the father will not disclose, the son will reveal. And what the master of the house may be desirous to hide, the servant may bring to light. The spy has need of frequent and lengthened research, whereas the Jesuit arrives at the fact at once. As has been before observed, the spy is deceived by false statements, which is not the case with a Jesuit. The confessional leads to many interesting discoveries, and where this is insufficient, much is learned even from the children in the schools. People who think they're doing good by confessing and answering questions to a priest are actually doing intelligence work for them. This information is compiled, and the means of acquiring this intelligence is the simple confessional booth. How much more when the person to whom one confesses is a highly skilled and trained Jesuit? But next we learn what happens at the Church of the Gesu, the heart of the Jesuit order in Rome. You know the Church of the Gesu. Every morning at break of day, as the doors are opened, 12 reverend fathers ascend the steps of the sacred edifice, dressed in their robes and surplices, and seat themselves in their chairs of confession. At that early hour, who are they who present themselves to give an account of their sins? Servants of both sexes, and all the old men and women who are stirring betimes in the morning. shopkeepers and work people. In short, all those who are better acquainted with other people's business than their own. So that in less than an hour, all the transactions and gossip of the city are related at these 12 confessionals, from whence, at the termination of the audience, they're taken home, as you may imagine, to be examined, discussed, and with due caution, registered as cases of conscience, etc. I have long stated that the big temptation is for prayer chains to become gossip chains. How much more would people freely confess to a priest whom they believe holds the keys for their souls to go to heaven? Just as they believe God knows everything, they also believe that the priests are right there, close to God. So confessing to the one, the priest, is like confessing to the other, the Lord. This is so much true that they even address the priest as Father. But as Jesus said, Matthew 23:9, and call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven. And it's not enough to have those Jesuit confessionals in Rome. What is done in the church of the Gesu is also done in those of St. Ignatius, of St. Andrew on the Monte Cavallo, of St. Vitale, and others belonging to the fathers of the company. He continued, but our exertions do not end here. We supply families with servants and change them when required. Consequently, everyone is obliged by us and entirely devoted to us. What's in a letter, like the letter G? A lot of things, depending upon which group you belong to. If you're a Mason, it may mean one thing. But if you're a Jesuit, it may refer to the Church of the Gesu, the heart of the Jesuit order on Piazza Gesu in Rome. It would take a lot of chutzpah for a Freemason to put what he considered their Supreme Council of 33 across the street from the world headquarters of the Pope's private army. So is it possible that the Jesuits were secretly running at least some of the Masonic order? Sounds pretty likely to me. What do you think? The Gesu is the heart of a lot of things, including intelligence. But their spies don't have to torture, like the Inquisition, or deceive, like some police and other agents. They get their information freely told them by means of private confessions. And information, knowledge, is power. Where do you suppose all that information goes? Remember these books, those books that the Jesuits keep, that Jacopo found in the House of First Probation? If not, watch Jesuits Parts 1 and 2. You'll see how well the Jesuits work out in the field in the next video. Until then, God bless you and have a wonderful day.